I'm pretty sure my first conversation with the designer was something like, we're going to do short-term rentals. I have no clue what we need, but I need it to be a complete unit and it needs to be durable, but not too expensive.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. Hello and welcome to episode 245. I've been an admirer of today's guest ever since I came across his Cashflow Diary podcast many years ago. J Massey has raised capital for and invested in single-family homes, notes, cell phone towers, commercial real estate, and apartments. And today he's going to tell us about the new path his investing business has taken and why he sees a world of opportunity in short-term rentals. Jay has built his very own 34-unit, 46-bedroom short-term rental business from scratch, and he's shifted his Cashflow Diary brand to focus exclusively on building and training short-term rental entrepreneurs. Jay is also going to share how you can build a successful business with your spouse, his special sales tips for new business owners and entrepreneurs, and how he's dealing with the unique challenges of operating a business during the COVID-19 pandemic. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Now, I know that you have a very interesting backstory. And for our listeners who aren't familiar with you, why don't you fill us in? Tell us who you are and how you got started investing in real estate.
So for those of you listening, first of all, kudos to you for seeking more information. Often it's the information that we find on our own or discover on our own that actually leads us to the thing that we originally were after. And I think that's kind of the crux of the story. Is I was searching for a solution to the problem. My problem specifically came to light when my wife, when she's pregnant, she has a condition known as hyperemesis. It means she can't eat or drink. I had a punctured lung and I was born with asthma. So I was unable to walk and talk simultaneously without fainting. And we needed a way to earn an income when you could not actually, quote unquote, go to work or have a job. And through that process, is how we ended up looking for what we thought was, passive income, cash flow, anything other than what we couldn't do because we couldn't physically get up and go do something. So we had to find another way, and we had to find another way really fast to make it all work. And it turns out that real estate was the solution to the problem. The challenge, though, was there was a huge knowledge and understanding and ability gap at the beginning. And we had to close that gap little by little. And that's the part that I think a lot of us want to try to tackle in a weekend is closing that gap in a weekend isn't going to get it done in any way, shape, or form. And it takes a time to be able to make those incremental steps, which have helped us to do a lot of the things that you mentioned and now be able to work with and train individuals all over the globe.
You were in a very tight situation here, not even being able to go to work and have a job. Now, when you're trying to walk, tell us where did it begin with the real estate? How did you get started in it, and what was your first step?
So, I think the first step was really more understanding that I had to make it happen. I had to go through the entire process. Here's why I say that. I've seen a lot of individuals who want to get started in real estate, but yet they want to know all of the steps before they take the first one. Because our need was urgent, I was willing. I not only was I willing, I only asked, what do I need to do next? And I kept doing the next thing and only the next thing until I got to the end. And I was comfortable doing only the next thing because whatever else was, because it didn't matter whatever else was there, because I knew I was going to have to find a way to get it done anyway. Because you have to understand, During that time, it was, if I don't make something happen, we don't eat tomorrow. See, when you are fighting for food, when you're fighting for milk, there's a tight window of accountability, which means you have to perform daily. You don't get to take a week to learn the entire process, then feel comfortable, then say, okay, I'll try. It's no, what do I need to do next? That's what I need to do. Cool. I'll be right. And then that day you go do that thing. And then the next day you go, okay, cool. I did that yesterday. Now what do I need to do next? And then you just keep that level of intensity all the way through, which is what I did.
So how did you find that blueprint then to tell you what it was you needed to do as the next step?
There's specialized education that we all need. But more importantly, there's practice. There's the willingness and to do this right here. Fail fast, fail forward, fail frequently. So someone would say, hey, you need to go and get a buyer, a seller. You have to find someone who's willing to sell your house. I was like, okay, got it. And that's what I did. And I just kept going, even starting from something as simple as, hey, will you sell me my house or sell me your house? Is I didn't care if I looked embarrassed or silly because I didn't have the luxury of fear any longer. You know, you're squatting in bank-owned property. Credit score is 398. You won't eat. You must make a result happen today. I didn't care how many phone calls it was, how many flyers were needed to be passed out. There had to be a result, and there had to be a result every day. And so long as you keep making and pushing forward, that's what it did. So I would go to a networking group and ask people to let me buy their house. And I got more no's than I remember, but I got the one yes that mattered. And then I was like, cool. And when she said yes, I went back to them and just said, hey, okay, cool. She said yes. Now what? And they're like, well, did you get it under contract? I'm like, no, you didn't tell me to do that. So how do I do that? Do you have a contract? And then they handed me the paper. I'm like, cool, great. And then I went back to her and said, okay, cool. They say we're supposed to get it under contract. And then I hand her the paper. But she's looking at me like, what am I supposed to do with that? I'm like, I don't know. And so I go back to them. I'm like, what are we supposed to do with it? They're like, you need to fill it out. You want to, great. Could you tell me how? Oh, well, your name goes here. Her name goes there. I was like, oh, well, thank you. And then I go back, she signs it, and then I bring it back. Okay, now what? Well, you need to open escrow. Cool. What's that? I mean, it was literally like that. And because I was willing to be that person, if you will. I didn't care if I annoyed you. I had to achieve this result or we didn't eat. And once you go through the process, or any process for that matter, and see it through to completion, then you can then perfect the process over time. I don't care how much you study or plan. All of that goes out the window the moment you really engage. You know, so it is what it is. You're going to have to do it anyway. So that's what we did. And I just kept repeating that process until it worked, until we got all the way through to the end. And then once we closed the first one on June 18th, 2008, what we then did right after is we like 3 weeks later, we did like 11 in 1 week. And it was like, okay, so this is awesome. And it began to set off these questions in my head of, but I was always told that I had to go to college. I had to, not only go to college, get good grades. I got to finish the darn thing. I also, you got to have a credit score of something better than 398 because that's what I had. You know, there were all of these things that I had learned or picked up or assumed were true, but it gave me the evidence to begin to question that what my mom said. Mom said, don't talk to strangers, but I just talked to a whole bunch of strangers and made 20 grand this week. Maybe mom doesn't have everything right. And I began to question that and just continue to go, okay, what else can I do?
I think a lot of people are afraid to ask what they would consider to be a dumb question and look stupid in order to find out what that next step is, or find out what they think other people might think is obvious. But you did not have that fear. You didn't have the luxury of having that.
I had the fear, but it didn't matter. Understand? I didn't want to look stupid. That's why I hadn't done it before. I don't think any human does. We cannot learn and look stupid at the same time. It's not possible. It's one of the things that gets in our way. What was gifted to me was a situation, which I wish on no one, but was a situation in which looking stupid and letting that be the reason I don't do something about it, that would have been stupid. That's what would have been stupid. It's like, okay, so because all you got to do is ask yourself this question. It's like, okay, so your wife and your kid, they're not eating yet, correct? But they could eat if you just go ask a whole bunch of people these questions. Yes, that's true. So why don't you go do that? Right? Because that would have been the other side of this exact same coin. That wasn't a situation I could stomach. So the fear was still there, but the need to eat was greater.
How long did it take you then to go from June 18th, 2008, which is about 12, almost exactly 12 years from when we're talking right now?
I know.
12 years and minus 1 week. How long did it take you to go from that to where you felt comfortable or satisfied that you were actually making it in real estate and making money?
I don't know that I've ever felt satisfied. That's a feeling I don't know too well. I'm always striving for something more. But I will say this. 3 weeks after we did the first one, what happened is that we did 11 in a week. That the money we got from that helped us to move out of the property we were squatting in just before the sheriff arrived. And we finally got into a new apartment. But then that whole, did I just get lucky thing started sitting in? And that's what I heard some people had said. And I was just like, well, I don't know. So I had to do it again. Right. So because you couldn't do it just once, you had to do it again. And then I was, it happened again. So it was like, oh my gosh, I just did it again. And it just kept happening in batches over and over and over again. And I'm like, okay, so this is pretty good. Maybe I'm not lucky. And then it actually wasn't until, and this is really funny, but I had the swine flu, if you remember that. And so my wife, kid, children, everybody had left the house. They stayed at the in-laws. And I was still closing deals while in and out of consciousness, but because I was watching B movies on Netflix, barely conscious, drugged up on all the medication, trying to deal with the swine flu. But yet, during that time, we still closed some transactions. I don't think it wasn't until about that time where I realized, I was like, okay, this is something special. It's happening to us, and it's really happening to us right now. And over time, what has happened is that I'll meet individuals who say things to me like, hey, I've been listening to your show, or this, that, and the other. I'm just like, wow, I guess we are making a difference. This is cool. I like it. Let's keep going. And those are the moments when I just realize or feel like, we have a responsibility. We're fortunate to have learned what we have learned. I don't like how we had to learn it, but that doesn't make it any less true for anyone else listening. There are just certain lessons that you're going to learn, and your refusal to learn them is the only reason you haven't gotten a transaction done or as many transactions done as you'd like. On the other side of that fear is your next accomplishment.
What were you doing back then? Was it wholesaling, flipping? I mean,
we started out with wholesaling because when right before I became a real estate investor, we were doing we were selling our personal possessions on eBay. So I would, go in the closet, sell stuff. But when that ran out, I started going to other people's garage sales. So I would buy their stuff at a discount and then sell it on eBay at a discount. And then in the process of learning real estate, someone said, that's just like wholesaling. I'm like, well, tell me more. What do you mean? I had no idea that was a thing that you could do in the real estate world. I'm like, just keep in through that process of education. And because that's the purpose of education, is to train you and I to recognize, opportunity. The problem is that most of us only recognize JOB because that's what we've been trained to do. And as I was going through it, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. If you're saying that all I have to do is quote quote unquote. All I have to do is put it under contract, and then I can just sell that contract to someone else. You're saying that I can do that. Like I can do that. Like you will pay me to do that. So if I go find what you want, you're going to pay me. When that clicked, my friend, it was over. Because I was like, okay, I don't know why someone had said this before. I don't care. But I finally had a way to eat. That's why we got our transaction time down to 72 hours. Not because I thought it would be fun and sexy, because I wanted to make sure we kept eating. And that's what started it all.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. I want to skip ahead to the short-term vacation rentals because I know that that's your focus now, and I've known you to be apartments, multifamily, and but the short-term rental is that somewhat new for you, and how did that begin in your career?
Yeah. No, to be clear, I have stated this. I am asset agnostic. I care about cash flow. That's what I care about. And in the process, I still love apartments. So it's not something we've left behind. Okay. We've just changed who we put in the apartment. So instead of sending or renting an apartment unit, say to one family for a year, maybe operate that same apartment unit as a short-term rental. And it seems the numbers work out way better. That's my only point, is that the numbers work out way better. It's always about cash flow. It's always a solution to a problem. And the short-term rentals is a response to consumer demand, consumer buying habits. When we look at the economy as a whole, you will see a trend of people who want to rent the thing, not own the thing, whatever the thing is. It could be camera equipment. It could be a cook, personal chef. I mean, it could be Uber with the transportation and cars. You've got your Turo for the actual car rental situation. We have a number of trends that are affecting a number of different industries where we don't want to own the thing. We just want to rent it and pay for it when we need it or as we need it. Short-term rentals is no different. In fact, it's been around specifically in the United States since the Civil War period. And what has changed is the technology. The technology has created access for the common everyday individual, which is also part of the problem. That means the barrier to entry went straight through the floor. And which creates a training issue. When you don't know what you don't know, but you still have access to an opportunity that has massive impact. A lot of bad things can happen and that's what you typically see on the news. And when I began to realize that's why we just started training people on what to do, because it's like, look, we own property. We know how to screen. We know how to help you do this the right way and at scale, so that you could, have the property or the short-term rentals wherever you want and still be able to maintain control and operate everything as it needs to be, so that on the other end, you end up with the cash flow that you're looking for, but specifically the time that you need so it can be dedicated to something else. Because you when you try to buy a piece of property or real estate the traditional way, it doesn't produce enough income to remove the debt service and actually take care of deferred maintenance and leave you cash flow. So you end up having to make a choice between one of the three. Either I'm going to take money out, or I'm going to have deferred maintenance, or I'm not going to pay the mortgage. Now, obviously, you're going to pay the mortgage. So you're choosing between deferred maintenance or cash flow all the time. And I wanted to stop having to make that choice. And I was looking for a way to create more income through the same amount of expenses. And that's where short-term rentals comes today.
Break it down for us as far as the economics of that. Like,
Sure.
What kind of properties are you looking for? How much do they typically cost?
So the properties in and of themselves, they're the same properties that everyone listening to my voice could use, because it's not about the property. And I'll explain that in a second. When it comes to the cost, well, it's not about purchasing them either, because purchasing them actually slows down your cash on cash return. It's about controlling the property. That's what you have to do. Control it. I need control. So you can get control with a lease, and that's the easiest way to get control. And now you've got control. Cool. So we prefer, especially in we talk about a 3-phase system, to where on phase 1, all you worry about is leasing and learning how to actually run the thing, how to build one and run it. Then phase 2 is how to run 10 or 20 or 30 or more. And then phase 3, that's when, now that you've built this business over here, you have the ability to go out and purchase the real estate and still use it again for the same purposes. So when it comes down to it, though, just think about any property that you own right now, that take whatever the rent is, multiply that by 2. Okay. Just multiply that by 2. And then take your expenses and just add 10%. So if you do both of those things, you will notice that your net operating income is a much higher number. And that is the financial economic effect of taking a property that you are currently running as a traditional rental. That is ultimately what ends up happening. Now, it takes a lot of systems and work and technology to build it so that it runs smoothly. But if you're willing to do that, then that puts you in a completely different position when you're first getting started in real estate. Because now you're able to literally begin to build something that allows you to buy a house, at least once a year, if not twice a year. And if you want to buy bigger assets, then you just have to add more short-term rental units to the portfolio, because it is not uncommon for it to throw off 10, 20, 30, or even $40,000 or so a quarter, or even more, so that you have the capacity to keep building down payments. I tend to call it a down payment engine. That's literally what it does. It produces down payments so that you can go buy other assets.
Talk about that transition then to your first short-term rental. Like, why did you think it was a good idea, and who put it on your radar, and how did that work out?
It was actually one of my students came to me and said, "Hey, this is we did this with you taught us to raise money. Thanks. And this is what we did with it," which was completely opposite of what I had said to do. And I'm like, oh boy, let's see how this goes. So let's see what the numbers are looking at. And that's what got my attention, because I saw the numbers, very similar numbers to what I just shared with you. And I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Are you saying this happens every month? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, huh. And how much time are you doing this? I'm like, got it. So there was a whole bunch of just little questions like that, because when you look at the numbers, it's very, very clear. And so what happened is I said, all right, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to help you do it better. And I'm going to do it too. Because if what you're saying is true, then everybody needs to know about this. Because this is amazing. Because I wanted to be able to create more local jobs. I wanted the higher net profit. I wanted all of those things. And I didn't know how to get them, especially if you live in a place with high land values like California, like I do. It's like, man, I got to go all the way somewhere else in order to be able to achieve this goal. So it was kind of funny. Right after that meeting, my wife was there, but she was on her way out of town that weekend. And here's a little hint. Do not leave me alone with an idea and then go out of town and expect nothing to change, because she went to Chicago. And by the time she came back, so it's like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday type of trip. By the time she came back, I picked on my way to pick her up from the airport, or before, actually, as she was boarding the plane to come back, I called her and I said, hey, when you land, we need to go to Target. And she's like, For what? Well, we have some more apartments now, and we've got to we're building a short-term rental. We have a whole new business, and I don't know what we need in order to put in the unit, and I need your help. So understand, she left from that conversation, okay, that we had, till when she came back, stepping off the plane. I've already signed leases. We are moving forward, because I had spent the interim time getting denied and talking to all kinds of landlords, trying to figure out how to get someone to give me control. So I kept collecting a whole bunch of no's until I got the yes. And when I got the yes, I'm like, cool, great. And we just kept pushing forward. So it was bumpy because I'm not a designer. I don't design stuff. So we had to find that. We had to find the cleaning. We had to find all of the pieces without really understanding exactly what we're asking them to do, let alone committed to. I'm pretty sure my first conversation with the designer was something like, we're going to do short-term rentals. I have no clue what we need, but I need it to be a complete unit, and it needs to be durable, but not too expensive. That might have been the extent of my entire, project brief, if you will. And well, she made it happen. She's now done well over 300, 400 of these things for myself and our students. So, she's got it down. But at the end of the day, I needed to get through the entire process. Again, just like I said earlier, getting through that entire process was way more important than anything else. And then once I had it, I can now take apart the pieces and improve other pieces and improve that process over time, which is what we've done.
Just to be clear, you didn't actually go out and buy a property or convert one of your
none of them
properties. You signed a lease with someone who said, okay, you can go ahead and sign this 12-month lease. And
you want to do a minimum of 12 months. If you can get longer, then yes, it works. But yeah, because it's a better way financially to get started. It's less financial risk. You gain the same, if not better, experience, and you're in a more financially secure position long term to be able to not only just purchase a real estate property, but to also keep making purchases. And then you have enough revenue to upkeep it. You have enough revenue to pay the mortgage. You have enough revenue to still take some off the table. Those are the key components. And that's what's been missing from long-term real estate holdings since, I don't know, forever.
Where was this, and how long did it take you to start getting profitable?
Oh man, now you're going to get me excited. Okay, so I'm in Southern California. This was Orange County, California. So that's still where I live.
And they allow short-term vacation rentals. That wasn't an issue there.
Well, it depends on the city. So yeah, there was like I said, there's lots of educational hurdles around the understanding the word short-term or vacation rental in and of itself. There's a reason, by the way, I say short-term rental and not vacation rental, because there's a use case for temporary housing that is greater than just vacation. In fact, even though I'm in Southern California, the number one customer I don't want is the person on vacation, period. So we cater to anyone who's doing anything other than vacation for the most part, because we just don't want that person. That doesn't mean they're not profitable. It just means I don't want them. I don't want to build the system around serving that particular person. Now, some of our students, they do that all the time, and that's fine, but it doesn't matter. Here's my point. That was the part I did not even know. I didn't know how long it was going to take to actually make all the numbers work and start being operationally in the black, as they say. And man, it was like 42, 43 days. We were in the process of like, wait, hold on. Because when you do the math, it's like, okay, hold on. Because you'll have a lease that's, I'll say $2,000. We'll talk a 1-bedroom. Out here in California, that's a 1-bedroom. Sorry. It might be 600 square feet or so. So there it is, $2,000. That $2,000 lease plus, we'll call it, and I'm just rounding really quickly to give you guys some understanding, your utilities and whatnot, we're going to call that another $350 a month. So we're at $2,350 on a monthly basis, all in. Okay. And then cleaning is what's called a pass-through expense, meaning what your company or cleaning company charges you, you end up passing that on to the consumer. So again, $2,300, let's just call it $2,400 all in. Well, if you take $2,400 and you divide that by 30, as in 30 days in the month, you'll realize that's $75 or so, right? And here's my point. No, that's not. Is that right? Did I do that math? It's 70, 75, 80.
I think you're somewhere in the ballpark.
Somewhere in there. But here's my point. When's the last time you paid $75 per night or anything that wasn't a Motel 6? This was the key. In some areas in Southern California, there are places that are a lot more dollars per night. But in the area where this type of apartment would be, it is not uncommon. In fact, its market rate is easily $140 to $165 a night. I'm like, this works. And that's really what it comes down to. It's the math. And then once you learn to target your customers properly, you get better. In fact, the math I gave you is the worst the math should ever be, because it's your first 12 months and you don't know what you don't know about your customer. I said earlier, it's not about the real estate. And this was the key. It's about the experience at the piece of real estate. So if you've got a plot of land, yeah, you could still do this. Absolutely. Even if it's swampland, because somebody wants the swampland alligator experience, and you have the land that you could give it to them with. And when I realized that's the thing that makes this so accessible, because it's not about being 100% in the right location. It's about serving a particular customer and solving their problem. If they want a particular experience, which is the problem, they're looking for a particular experience, then you solve it for them. Now, they may be coming to your geographic area for a reason. Maybe it's medical travel. Fine. You can work with lots of high-level doctors and clinicians that have people who are traveling outside the area to come there. So just think your plastic surgeons and many other elective surgeries. But there's also, cancer as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that the short-term rental industry encompasses that most people forget about because they say the word vacation rental.
What is the experience that you're offering? Because I'm sure it's not swampland and alligators. not in Orange County anyway.
You're correct. Yes, I do not like bugs and insects at all. I am a city mouse for sure. We tend to cater to business travelers. That is by far like the thing. So people traveling on business for business, they definitely help fill in the weekdays. And then we work with families who traveling with small children. So think you're relocating CEO or middle management, someone working on mergers and acquisitions, but traveling with their family, someone just moving to the area, your realtors, that when they have two escrows, the family has two escrows, one closes and the other doesn't, and they're stuck in between with no place to stay. Think that. And then we also have the medical, as I mentioned. Medical by far are some of the best customers because they're not focused on the actual property in and of itself, because they're there for something completely different. And that's the key, is because they're there for something completely different, they really are easy to make happy. And that brings us joy because it's easy to make them happy. And yay, I like that.
What's the average length that someone would stay at one of your places?
Pre-COVID, it was 5.6 days. Post, it's much longer. So we've been doing a significant amount of multiple month business, lots of 13-week stays, especially with medical professionals. So 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, that type of thing has been kind of the norm. Because again, with the whole COVID thing, you've got the 14-day quarantine period, which creates in and of itself, a 14-day reservation, if you think about it. So it is in flux right now, specifically because of everything that's going on. And it's just going longer as opposed to shorter. Now, I assume once, things go back to whatever the new normal ends up being, it'll go back down. But right now, it's creeping up to the point to where we need more locations.
So that's good to hear, because I know we're recording this June 11th, I think it is. And here in Michigan, a lot of the short-term rental owners have really been hit hard because they haven't been allowed to have people stay at their places unless they were medical professionals, I suppose. But how has COVID affected you, and what do you see as the outlook? Is that going to have a dampening effect on the industry?
One, for those who are, I just want to share this for any existing short-term rental operators who were having trouble filling or feel like the government stopped you. I submit this, do your research, but I promise you it's there. It's the definition of short-term rental that you'll need to look up inside your ordinances for most places across the country and world that my students or I've had to research. That definition is either 28, 29, 30, or 31 days or less, meaning if you have the property available for 30 days or more, then it is no longer in the quote unquote short-term rental category. So you can still avail yourself of some of the same marketing platforms that you're already used to with these exceptions. Again, look it up. It's likely there. That has helped a lot of people. So that's never there. As far as COVID, yeah, it hurt. I mean, man, we saw well over 100 reservations disappear in like a 72-hour period when everything was first literally falling apart. And I mean, we lost $80,000 a month of recurring revenue. That's a problem, right? So it got us to pay attention, because it got my attention for sure, but it requires engagement. It doesn't mean, it means the cheese has been moved. Who moved my cheese? It's a cheese. When I realized that, it was like, okay, cool. I got to go find where the cheese is at. And where there's chaos, there is cash flow. So it began looking at the news. The news is by far one of the best lead generators on the planet. The news was saying things that, schools were shut down. That means campuses were closed. That means students were stranded. Oh, well, they need a place to stay. That's something we can do. Companies were shut down. Offices were shut down. That now means mom and dad were working at home. And so were the schools. So the kids were there, and they never chose to work at home from home. They didn't design their home for that. And they definitely didn't plan on doing it with the kids there. So guess what? Mr. Employer, if you want your people, they can come to our place to work. That's fine, because we can keep it clean. We can do all the stuff. And then now their kids aren't crawling all over them all day trying to get work done. They can be productive. As I mentioned earlier, the emergency responders needed a place to quarantine because they didn't want to take this stuff back home to their family. And then the news started talking about how nursing homes, facilities were having trouble with outbreaks. Well, grandma can stay with us away from it until they get their situation under control. So the news is by far a great place, like a very great place to find opportunity, because it's just them telling you where the problems are. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're willing to solve those problems and you have the resources to do so, then it's just a marketing challenge. That's really all it was, is a marketing challenge. But once you solve that, the need is still there. So, people are traveling differently, but the need is still there. In fact, recent research, even though like today, I think the numbers are, the travel industry, if you will, is down 61% year over year as of this exact moment. However, the research forthcoming is around travelers' preferences, specifically around accommodation, is short-term rentals are going to win. Here's why. Because now the concept or thought of touching something as simple as the elevator button, which you currently use in a hotel, is now, I'm not sure I want to do that. The thought around being in a hotel lobby that is typically crowded, not sure I want to do that either. So there are many, many things that are becoming customer preferences that make temporary housing in a more isolated fashion, which we can provide as a short-term rental operator, more favorable in this situation. And the longer this goes, the deeper that habit or that change happens, which means, short-term rental operators have a very, very bright future ahead of them.
So that's great insight. And it sounds like you figured out where the cheese was moved and you were able to find it. Do you have any other advice for short-term rental operators and owners as to what they should be anticipating and thinking about right now?
The biggest thing to know is to diversify your customer acquisition strategy, because pre-COVID, I'm sure nearly 80% of us were just Airbnb only. And that's wonderful. And when you do that, you create a single point of failure. You probably know that now. But now you need to have a full business, a full short-term rental business. This is why I've always said it's not an Airbnb business. You provide short-term rental housing. Is to get you to think beyond your Airbnb as just the customer acquisition platform, because that's really all it is. And I'm not just saying now, cool, go to booking.com and Travelocity, et cetera, et cetera. I'm saying take that customer like any other business owner would do. If you had a restaurant and someone came in, you ran a promotion and they came in the door, the number one thing you're thinking about is, what can I do to get that person to come back? How can I get them to bring a friend? How can I continue to grow the business? Do that same thing. Take all of those individuals who you have already hosted or stayed with you and ask them, think about it. What can you send them? What could you do to get them to send you their friends? What could you do? I don't know that answer for everybody's case. I know that you can do something though, and begin to develop a way of acquiring customers that doesn't depend on any of the marketing platforms, and build your own website, your own reservations, so that you can be independent and have a diversified customer acquisition strategy. You make that happen, or as you make that happen, while yes, it sounds like a lot of work, and it is, I say this, you'll be able to charge your customers less, but you will have a higher net profit. Ultimately, it's what you should have been doing anyway, but now you've just been given a reason to do it faster.
Great advice. I want to talk about your wife, because you mentioned that she,
Yes.
Is she part of your business, and how?
Oh, absolutely.
How does that work?
Well,
Who's in
so
charge,
at the beginning,
really?
she was beyond. I mean, again, my skill set stopped at the signing of the lease. That was it. I didn't know anything else to do. So she was directing traffic, colors, and silverware, and where we're buying this. And I like, awesome. It just happened because that's not me. And now today, the biggest role that she plays is organizing all the utilities. It's a lot. Because that in and of itself, getting, all of these utility accounts set up, getting all of them on, not only just on autopay, but keeping them on autopay, and heaven forbid should the utility company make a change in some way, shape, or form. And then being able to make sure all of our security systems and our entry and access codes are what they need to be. That in and of itself is a full-time operational job. And hallelujah, I'm so glad she does it, because it's crazy. It's hard. It's not easy to even think about, but it is a necessary piece of the business that I was not qualified for at all. But somehow she likes it. So
has she always been involved in the real estate activities, or is it really with the short-term rentals that you guys have started this business together?
Yeah, exactly. And that I found that to be very, very true for a lot of married couples, is that one is probably more real estate focused from the beginning, but then they start doing the whole short-term rental thing. And then now suddenly their skill sets begin to mesh and they begin to fit together. So this is the first time she and I have worked this closely for this long, because her skill sets fit. It's just a part of it, and it works out great. So, and I've seen this on a number of occasions with a number of couples.
For those who do go into business with their spouse, what are some of the tension points to be aware of, and how do you?
I'll just say, men, watch your tone of voice. Okay. Yeah. She's still your spouse, not an employee or something. Yeah. You just got to watch your tone of voice. That is probably the area I have the most trouble with, because I can be can we just get this done? I'm trying to perform here. Let's go. and that may not be necessarily the way it needs to be said at the most part. It's not what you're asking them to do is necessarily wrong. It's just how you're asking them does need to still have special care in some way, shape, or form. So I'm not going to say any more than that. I'm going to leave it right there. Let the men hear that. The women are probably going, yeah, see, I told you. And that's great.
I want to get back to the salesmanship conversation, because I really do think that for you to start off as a wholesaler and convince someone to sell you their house and then go out and turn around and sell that house to someone else, and then even just everything you've been doing along the way does require a certain amount of salesmanship. And I know you kind of disagree, but at the same time, how do you see yourself as a salesman, or do you even at all? And what tips do you have for people when it comes to selling?
I don't see myself as a salesperson. Now, I happen to be a person who sells stuff. That's different, because sales is equal to service. And at the end of the day, it's no different than a firefighter. If your house was on fire right now and someone came up to you and said, would you like my help with the fire? Your answer is likely yes. No problem. That'll be $19.97 and I can help you. Right? Now, in this situation, it's very clear that you need help. The fire's out of control. They have all the equipment. They understand. And even if the help is teaching you how to use the equipment so that you can put the fire out yourself, it's still worth it at the end of the day. That's how I see it. All we do is develop a solution, and we ask you if you'd like it. If you agree, great. If you don't, I may ask you, could you tell me why? Because if I see your house is on fire, I may ask you, okay, something like, I clearly, you know what? Sometimes I don't see things clearly. Could you help me understand why you believe your house isn't on fire? Because I am missing something. And maybe you're right. Maybe your house isn't on fire. Okay, fine. But somebody's house is on fire. And let me ask you this question. Now that we've sat here this entire time, I'm just curious, if someone else's house was on fire, do you have someone that you would be able to refer them to? No, I don't. Do you mind if I become that person? No, I do not. Great. See, what I just took you through is a hypothetical situation, but honestly, it's exactly what we do. We make an offer to someone who we believe we can help, who they believe, when we agree, great. If we don't agree, fine. Can you send me a referral? And then I give you a reason to give me that referral, because I treated you with respect. I assumed nothing because I asked you, and if you disagree, fine, no problem. But however, if someone else comes into your path, could you please send them our way? That's all we're really asking. So I don't view it as me trying to convince you of anything. I mean, if you think that what you're doing is solving all of your cash flow problems, great. Or you don't have any, fine. Don't change it. Write a book about it. Teach somebody else, please. But if there is something that's going on and you'd like to be able to get involved in real estate, you'd like to be able to take your portfolio and double it or triple it, you'd like to finally crack 6 or 7 figures, then okay, cool. I can help you. Here's step 1. And if that's not part of what you want, that's completely fine. So it's not, but I understand what you're saying. But it does take discipline. It does take emotional fortitude. It does take, being willing to be told no a lot, but I don't necessarily think of those skills as sales. I mean, by the time we're an adult, we've been told no so many times on many things, and at the end of the day, if you're willing to serve people, no different than what you're doing with the podcast, you serve people, I don't see it as sales. I just see it as service.
Well, I think the best salespeople are the ones who can help others the most. As we wrap it up, Jay, tell us, any wisdom for our listeners would be fantastic.
Here's what I would say is for those of you who feel comfortable right now, hopefully you've listened this far. Number one. Number two, understand that oftentimes that comfort feeling that you have is a little false. It's very few individuals I run into who actually have a solid plan that is going to carry them through to retirement or whatever you want to call it throughout your life. And because you can have a great job, but you still have a single point of failure if that's your only source of income. You could build a real estate portfolio, but if it's too small and you don't have the capacity to build it large enough, then that too doesn't exactly work. And the stock market in Wall Street isn't exactly the answer there either, because you've got to now deal with taxes and in a whole different way. And your qualified plan, well, it's qualified by the IRS. So they gave you a benefit. I promise you, there's a downside to that's worthy of research. What it comes down to is delve into financial education such that you end up developing a way of producing income. The more time you spend developing assets, learning how to control them and put them out there for other people to use so that you can develop not just a stream of income, but a stream of income that is resistant to taxes and inflation, then you are on the way, because that is what it's going to take for each of us, And again, I don't care what the underlying asset is. Just know that taxes and inflation, and these are things that you may not think about in the same way, because it's not just about a big pile of money. It's about how that money is taxed once it's earned. And the more work you do there, the faster and further you'll get ahead.
So Jay, if someone wanted to find out more about you or get a hold of you, how would they do so? And please feel free to mention your podcast and your book.
Well, there you go. So if you type in Cashflow Diary, pretty much in any search engine, you're going to find me. If you go to cashflowdiarypodcast.com, then you'll go straight to the podcast. But here's something that I would consider to be a gift and the next step of your journey. Many people want to know how, they ask me, how many units do I need to quit my job or retire, or this, that, and the other. So instead of answering it over and over, I just made a calculator. You can go to cashflowdiary.com/how many units. Literally plug in to the calculator all your information, name, email, some numbers and whatnot, so that it knows and it will calculate how many units, how many short-term rental units you need to replace whatever portion of income you're trying to replace. And start there, because that way you can find out, hey, you may only need 5 units. You may need 10. You may need 20. You may need less than you think in order to put yourself in a position that you thought previously was 5, 10, 20 years from today. So again, just go to cashflowdiary.com/how many units and see what it says.
Jay, I want to thank you for sharing your story with us, how you used real estate investing to kind of overcome some very difficult situations, and also how you've kind of pivoted to short-term rentals. It's been really interesting hearing your perspective on that and how you're doing it. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, no, anytime. It's fun for me, fun for you, and hopefully we'll inspire a life.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.